Some people never learn. Can the neuroscience of predictive coding and learning failure explain it? What about the power of the arts? Have you ever wondered why some people seem to repeat mistakes, cling on to old habits, or struggle to adapt despite receiving new information or feedback? The feeling that some people just never learn, it's not just a social observation. It's a deep and fascinating puzzle at the heart of neuroscience. Recent research suggests the answer lies not in stubbornness or lack of intelligence, but in how our brains are wired to predict, and how those predictions can help or hinder our ability to learn, grow, and change direction. Today we'll explore the stunning science of predictive coding, a framework explaining not just how the brain learns, but why it seeks certainty and sometimes resists learning. We'll discover how active inference drives our actions, unpacks the habits of stuck minds, and how deliberate creativity and the arts can push us out of cognitive ruts, restore curiosity, and train flexible, open minds. Guys, this is a very, very important topic that I selected for you today, and it's going to be the foundation of a number of future videos. And I think you're going to want to learn this for the betterment of your own life. I'm shocked more people don't know about this, but it is more recent neuroscience findings, probably over the last 10 years. And actually, that's how AI is built. Hey everyone, I'm Henry, and you're watching Day 60 on my channel, Henry's Millions, where I dive deep into psychology, spirituality, and the science of the mind, helping you unlock your personal potential and understand the forces that shape your life. All right, now for the predictive brain. So for most of human history, the brain was seen as a passive sponge, soaking up sensory data from the world and reacting accordingly. But neuroscience scientists have uncovered a far more dynamic process. Your brain is an active prediction machine, constantly generating hypotheses about what it expects to encounter and adjusting those expectations as new data arrives. This is going to be a lengthy video talk today, at least half an hour, but it's going to be one of the most useful things you're going to learn on YouTube. So the predictive coding theory, championed by neuroscientists like Carl Friston and described in countless studies and reviews, says that your brain is constantly guessing what's about to happen next. It's not just taking in sensory information, it's actively shaping what you experience by projecting expectations downward into the data stream, meaning from higher order brain areas into lower sensory regions, so they can be compared against raw sensory input. So when you walk into a familiar cafe, your brain doesn't reconstruct the scene pixel by pixel. Instead, it rapidly generates predictions based on memory, context, prior experience, filling in the blanks wherever possible. So here's how the cycle works. First, your brain sets an expectation based on past experience, projecting a likely outcome in any situation. Then reality delivers its sensory feedback, whether that's the physical feeling of balance while riding a bike or a surprise of a new word in a conversation. So when there's a mismatch between what you expected and what actually happens, your brain registers this as a prediction error, essentially a signal that something isn't quite right. So at this point, a flexible mind will use that error as information and incorporate the new data, revising its expectations. But when our thinking is rigid, we tend to instead reject or rationalize the surprise away, clinging to old beliefs instead of learning and adapting. I promise you, after this video, and you might need to watch it again, you're going to understand why some people just don't learn. And if something has been difficult for you, myself included, to change, to learn, to adapt, this is going to provide the answers. So predictive coding saves energy by only paying attention when expectations and reality diverge. The brain maintains internal models or predictions about the world and compares incoming information to these models. So the only thing passed up the neural chain is surprise, or what neuroscientists call a prediction error. So when reality matches expectation, things proceed smoothly. And anything that doesn't match the brain's model registers a prediction error, prompting learning, correction, or shifts in awareness. By the way, if you were to go research this content, this information yourself, it's fascinating, but it's probably more complex. I've tried to simplify this for you. So in half an hour, you're going to get instruction that would probably take you many, many hours to read a book or research online, and it's going to change your life. All right, so crucially, prediction errors are not mistakes. They are signals prompting the brain to update its internal model. The more flexibly and accurately these models are adjusted, the better we learn. But what happens when prediction errors are ignored, explained away, or consistently not updated in the brain's manual? This is when learning stalls. The brain, sticking to old predictions, resists change, even when the experience demands an update. This helps explain why some people keep making the same mistakes, holding on to outdated beliefs, or misperceiving reality. Let's talk about how predictive coding explains stubbornness. Remember, I did a video on stubbornness just days ago. If you're interested, look that up. So we have a feedback loop that governs behavior. Consider how you learn to ride a bike or master a language. Each failed attempt gives your brain new data, prompting a recalibration of what's expected next time. But if someone's internal prediction, for example, I always fall or I always fail, is too rigid, they may ignore or minimize successful attempts, and that perpetuates the belief that they'll never learn. So we now understand that perception itself isn't a mirror, but a negotiation. As top neuroscientist Andy Clark explains in his landmark book, Surfing Uncertainty, perception arises from a dynamic dance between top-down predictions and bottom-up sensory evidence. So think prefrontal cortex for executive control and primary sensory cortices for sight and sound, right? Top-down, so higher level and lower level. So the brain's job isn't to capture reality passively. It's to create a compelling, useful story that best fits the available evidence, constantly tweaking the script in response to new signals. So functional MRI and electrophysiological research backs this up. Higher order brain areas send predictions down towards sensory regions, and it's only the mismatches, the unexpected bits, that gets highlighted and brought to our conscious attention. In other words, you literally see and learn only what deviates from what your brain already assumes. Think about that. But this beautiful system has a price, and we'll soon see. When predictions are too strong, think about this, when predictions are too strong, or the mechanisms for registering surprise are blunted, this is prediction error, we can become blind to the evidence that's right in front of us. Let's look more closely at a key ingredient in this process. It's called priors. And no, I'm not talking about a criminal record. This is what they're called in neuroscience, priors. Your brain weighs new data against existing priors, which are established expectations. If the priors are too strong, like for example, I'm bad at math, I can't change, things like this. So if the priors are too strong, prediction errors may not result in meaningful updates. People aren't doomed to ignorance. It's rather their predictive machinery can become locked, discounting surprises that would otherwise catalyze learning. So now that we've seen how strong internal predictions can make us blind to new evidence, let's explore what happens when the brain doesn't just interpret the world passively, but starts actively shaping it, seeking out and reinforcing its own expectations through the choices we make. Guys, this is fascinating here. This is another area that's just fascinating. This is adaptive inference. Remember what I just said. The brain doesn't just interpret the world passively through the process that I've just explained to you, but it actively shapes it. I'm going to explain how that works. So active inference, it builds on predictive coding by proposing that we don't just sit back and wait for feedback. We act in ways that minimize our sense of surprise or uncertainty. So the brain seeks out or even manipulates situations that makes its predictions more likely to come true. For example, if your brain says, are my eyes blinking rapidly? When it gets this sensory feedback from your visual cortices or whatever's controlling, the rapid eye movement, if your eyes say no, we're not blinking rapidly, they don't even return that response. They will start blinking rapidly when the brain asks, am I blinking rapidly? Do you see what I'm saying? So the brain has this expectation that the rest of your body seeks to fulfill. So this is what we're discussing here. So the brain seeks out and manipulates situations that makes its predictions more likely to come true. This is the process called active inference, and it's one of neuroscience's most revelatory ideas. Simply put, the brain strives to minimize prediction error, not just by updating beliefs, but by seeking actions and environments that confirm what it already expects. So I give you an extremely simple example. This actually works with so much more, like where you put yourself, your environment. Am I holding a cup? If you weren't holding the cup, you would hold it. So this is more explanation there. So if you believe you're socially awkward, for example, you might avoid parties. So you never have to test that expectation, or behave nervously when you're forced to attend, eliciting responses from others that prove your point. So this isn't conscious sabotage. It's the outcome of neural systems designed to reduce surprise, even at the cost of your growth. And empirical studies, including those by Friston and colleagues at University College London, they show that active inference governs everything from eye movements to social dynamics. The brain values predictability over novelty, pushing us to repeat routines, revisit old wounds, or surround ourselves with confirming voices. So a classic example is the echo chamber, a social or media environment curated to reinforce existing beliefs. And economists and psychologists alike warn that this self-selection stifles learning. And there's evidence that information bubbles are driven in part by our brain's craving for predictable things. So this means that our choices, behaviors, and even what we pay attention to are shaped by invisible predictions. We prefer environments where our expectations are met, which can create a comfort zone where learning stagnates. And active inference helps explain why some people self-select situations that reinforce what they already know, while others push themselves into discomfort and rapid learning. Remember, in the past we've talked about pushing through your comfort zone, putting yourself in uncomfortable and new situations. So this is why real change feels so uncomfortable. It threatens your prediction equilibrium, forcing both your mind and action to confront surprise. It's not just what we know, but where we place ourselves and which feedback loops we nourish that make the difference between repeating yesterday and learning for tomorrow. So why do some people repeat their mistakes? If your brain is set on minimizing prediction error by retreating from surprises, you may avoid new situations, repeat established routines, or even unconsciously sabotage new experiences. Have you ever done that before? In effect, you confirm your existing beliefs about the world at the expense of learning something new. Have you ever found yourself declaring, "Tonight I'm going to bed early," only to catch yourself hours later, hypnotized by one last scroll through your phone, or Or maybe you may notice yourself getting stuck in an old loop of overanalyzing every tiny decision the moment something feels uncertain. Sometimes you launch into a new project full of passion only to trip over the same old hurdles of hesitation or self-doubt. These moments aren't just bad habits slipping through the cracks. They're your brain holding on to what's comfortable, quietly keeping you in the known. So if you like to think for a second here, you could even pause, but is there a scenario in your life, big or small, where you keep bumping into the same wall, even though you know better? Maybe it's always retreating in difficult conversations or replaying the same story about not being creative enough when starting something new, for example. So this isn't proof of laziness or a personal flaw. It's simply evidence of how deeply our habits and expectations, our mental priors, are programmed by the brain. But here's the upside. The moment you catch yourself repeating an old pattern, you've unlocked a chance to choose something new. Every flash of self-awareness is a launch pad for rewriting your own script. So let's talk about why prediction errors matter for real learning. Because some people just don't learn, as it seems. Let's dig deeper into the idea of this prediction error. Okay, every time your expectations don't match reality, when you expect a friend's call and it doesn't come, or predict a word in a language and it's wrong, your brain generates a signal. So something's off. This prediction error is the very currency of learning. So in the lab, researchers have recorded these signals and show that error-related negativity spikes signals in response to mistakes. The healthy brain welcomes and learns from these signals, using them to update beliefs and predictions. I'm actually sparing you from a lot more of this scientific detail here and research. So if you're interested, you can dig more deeply into it, okay? So the healthy brain welcomes and learns from these signals, using them to update your beliefs and predictions. Tomorrow you'll be better at guessing what comes next because today you were wrong. So in a healthy learning system, encountering a surprise or unexpected outcome is a good thing. It's a prompt for updating your beliefs or skills. There's something called the Bayesian brain hypothesis. It's important, that's why I'm mentioning it to you. It notes that the mind constantly weighs new evidence against old expectations or established priors, with strong priors sometimes overpowering the weight of reality. So sometimes scientists describe the brain as Bayesian, referring to Bayesian statistics. It's a method that updates beliefs step by step as new evidence appears. So in cognitive therapy, this explains resistance to change. In social psychology, it's the basis of confirmation bias and closed-mindedness. This is why early successes or failures aren't destiny. What matters is how flexibly you respond to new prediction errors. And sometimes prediction errors are ignored or explained away. So this isn't just stubbornness, it's a deep neurobiological glitch. If you've ever met someone convinced they can't sing or are bad at math, you've witnessed strong priors in action. These are resilient beliefs that shield against even overwhelming contrary evidence. And those who learn the best are not those who make no mistakes, but they're those who notice and respond to the mistakes constructively. The ability to learn from failure is at the neural level. The ability to let prediction errors revise your internal model. I was going to say revive. It's the same. Ultimately, it's not intelligence, but the ability to notice, value, and learn from error that sets learners apart. Prediction errors, if we're open to hearing them, they are the secret to growth. All right, now digging more deeply into why some people never learn, we're going to talk about why the brain fails to update. So this is the heart of it in terms of some people never learning or appearing that way. It's not the lack of their intelligence, or it's actually that they're stuck. Their prediction system is stuck. So if the brain depends on comparing new evidence to prior beliefs, attitudes, and expectations, then it's easy to see how trouble starts when those priors become too strong. Imagine relying on last year's city map, or ignoring new trails or neighborhoods. So in predictive coding's mathematical roots, a prior is just a statistical summary, what you expect based on history. But in psychological life, priors are your beliefs about yourself and the world. If you know that you're doomed to fail in relationships, that assumption will color every interaction, making you hyper-aware of rejection and blind to signals of acceptance or change. That's very interesting. I mean, because in psychology, we talk about hypervigilance and, this psychological processes and concepts like that color our interactions, filters and such. So there's research on cognitive rigidity, a key trait in clinical conditions from autism to anxiety, shows that an inability to revise priors in light of new data leads to persistent difficulties. Studies published in journals like Nature and Psychological Medicine reveal neural differences in brain circuits tied to updating. People with strong and flexible priors often rely on simplified rules of thumb and dismiss conflicting information. If you've hung in with me this long, I really congratulate you. This can be difficult material, but it's very useful. And I appreciate that. And I'm sure you're going to subscribe after this. So crucially, you don't need a clinical diagnosis to feel this trap. Everyday failures to learn, from sticking with a doomed career to sabotaging a new habit, are often rooted in powerful, emotionally charged priors. Like, I can't, saying that, or that's not who I am, or the world is not safe. These mantras are more than negative thoughts. They are neural predictions. The people really don't realize how powerful the words they use are, and even more so, their internal dialogue. Just don't even give it a second thought. It's powerful stuff here. These are neural predictions, hardwired and fiercely defended. So the hope lies in the research that priors, while they're persistent, that they're not irreversible. With effort, novelty, patience, prediction systems can be rewired. But first we have to notice these prison bars that we're living behind. But why does our predictive machinery so often cling to comfort and familiarity instead of embracing the corrective power of surprise? And the answer to that lies in a fundamental law of biological brains. It's a drive that shapes not just individual minds, but all of life. I want to introduce you to a new principle here. It's an important part in this whole process. It's called the free energy principle. It's going to be simple, okay? The free energy principle, it's why predictive minds seek comfort. So at the cellular level, the drive to avoid surprise isn't just a minor quirk. It's a principle that governs all organic life. The free energy principle, articulated by neuroscientist Carl Friston, proposes that living systems, including brains, constantly strive to minimize free energy. This is the gap between what's expected and what's encountered. It's called free energy because it's a mathematically defined measure, borrowed from statistical physics, but it's repurposed. So for how much uncertainty, surprise, or error remains to be explained by the brain's model of the world. So the brain constantly works to minimize this quantity, ensuring more efficient and adaptive perception and behavior. Okay, this is the free energy principle. So in everyday language, this means our biology is built for comfort and certainty. The more we can align internal models with external reality, or failing that, make the world fit our predictions, the safer, less stressed, and more in control we feel. It's when we rush for routine after a disruption, cling to the familiar after a shock, and run from ambiguity whenever possible. But this ancient drive, while it's protective, it's a double-edged sword. The same mechanisms that create stability and habit can also trap us, shackling development, creativity, and the willingness to risk failure for the sake of a better future. In evolution, it's easier to survive the dangers you know than gamble on the unknown. With people, we say, what is that? It's better the devil that you know. So neuroimaging and behavioral research corroborate this viewpoint. The brain rewards familiar patterns with dopamine-driven feelings of pleasure and security, while deviations can trigger anxiety and avoidance responses. Habits, whether they're as innocuous as a morning routine or as destructive as addiction, they're comforts children. They're maintained by networks built for resisting the surprise of change. All right, Henry, what the heck do we do with all of this? Great information, but how can I put this into practice? We're going to talk about that right now. We're going to talk about the role of the arts in enhancing learning and cognitive flexibility. I know when I first read this, I just felt like I was in an art gallery or something, someplace I did not want to be. But just bear with me here. This is very useful. So if routine is a cognitive rut, then art is a shovel that can dig us free. Do you like this analogy? So recent neuroscience reveals that creative engagement, whether making art, playing music, or even witnessing a performance, is more than entertainment. It's a workout for the prediction system, demanding flexibility, openness, and continual readjustment. So why are the arts so potent? Art is by nature uncertain. Good stories upset our assumptions. I mean, even reading fiction, this is what we're talking about. Jazz improvisation throws curveballs at the brain's expectation monitors. A new dance move, an unexpected twist, or a clashing color invites us to predict and then surprises us, handing out little doses of prediction error. In each one of those is an opportunity to update and grow. The neuroimaging shows that creative activities engage broad networks in the brain's executive, emotional, and motor systems, stimulating both the flexible default mode and the disciplined task-positive networks. Studies published in journals such as the Frontiers in Psychology and Nature Neuroscience, they confirm that artistic improvisation increases connectivity with the prefrontal cortex, the command center for mental flexibility and cognitive control. So there's also evidence of transfer, like people exposed to a wide range of artistic and novel experiences show not only greater creativity, but also more resilience in the face of uncertainty, healthier emotional regulation, and improved problem-solving skills. The arts act as a kind of cognitive playground, allowing us to rehearse being surprised and respond adaptively in a safe space. So now for some brief treatment on mirror neurons. It's important to discuss this. Mirror neurons, like a mirror, and empathy and simulation. So there's specialized brain cells called mirror neurons, activate not only when you perform an action, but also when you observe someone else. That's why they're called mirror, or even imagine it. So mirror neurons are found in multiple interconnected regions of the brain, primarily within motor and sensory networks. When you watch a dancer leap or read a compelling story, your brain's motor and emotional systems react as if they're experiencing these actions and emotions yourself. This mirroring is crucial for empathy, for imagination, and for growing your internal predictive models. And they let you rehearse a wide range of human experiences. So this mirror neuron research, as examined by neuroscientist Ramachandran, shows that when we witness or imagine an artistic actions, our brains internally simulate them. This firing of as-if networks strengthens not only empathy, but the machinery of learning itself, blurring the boundaries between doing, seeing, and becoming. Imagination. This is powerful. Imagination and simulation for training the predictive mind. So imagination isn't just creativity for its own sake. It's your brain's internal training ground. When you picture a conversation before it happens, when you daydream about a new project, or mentally rehearse a new skill, the same predictive circuits at work in real life are being exercised behind the scenes. And research shows that imagination and simulation help refine your predictions safely, letting you prepare for the unexpected and become more adaptable in the real world. So how can we nudge our minds back into flexible learning? Painting, music, literature, dance, performing arts, these are all areas for experiencing novelty, for surprise, and for adjusting your predictions. So art and music simulate executive and emotional networks in the brain. Engaging with fiction, with narrative, requires us to simulate alternative realities, to rehearse what-if scenarios and empathize with others. So what is the practical advice here? How to make sure that you learn, and you're not someone that we're pointing to as who never learns. What's the practical advice here? So too much habit and your brain stops adapting. Repeat this again. You know this. Too much habit, too much routine, and the brain stops adapting. Too much chaos on the other side, and the learning becomes overwhelming. So how do we apply all this science to the art of real life? So the key is to deliberately mix familiar routines with new experiences, like practicing a skill you know, then purposefully improvising or challenging yourself with something unpredictable. So this active push and pull keeps your mind nimble and open to growth. Another thing, make a habit of interrupting your own routines. So whether by trying a new route to work, or reading a book out of your comfort zone, or striking up a conversation with someone from a different background. So every small act of novelty stirs your prediction system. It creates fresh opportunities for error-driven learning. So when you catch yourself repeating a mistake, for example, pause before rationalizing or assigning blame. Ask, what did my prior expectation lead me to assume? What evidence did I ignore? And this is how you transform failures into data points. And these are routes to update, and you refine your internal model. The most adaptive learners are those who grow curious in the face of error, not defensive. Okay? And embrace art actively. Don't just watch it passively. Engage, improvise, participate. This is the secret of the learning mind. It seeks, accepts, and even delights in prediction error. All right, so the phrase, "some people never learn," it hides an extraordinary truth. Behind every stuck mind is a predictive brain, doing its best to minimize surprise, even when it means repeating the very patterns that keep us stuck. But neither you nor anyone else is doomed by biology. Predictive systems can be retrained. Priors can be rewritten, and every surprising, uncomfortable, creative experience is an invitation to update your mental map. So why not try a challenge for this week? Take one routine, one small area of your day, and approach it with creativity. Add a new twist, break your own pattern, invite a prediction error, and notice what surprises you, and let that surprise guide you. Who knows? Maybe you just discover that you're more learnable than you ever imagined. YouTube picked this next video for you from all of the videos on my channel. It says best for viewer. I hope you enjoy it. What will my next topic be about? Find out tomorrow. Every time.